My early influences, if I really think about it, started with my parents. I came out of a theater family. Both my parents were Broadway actors, although my father also did Hollywood. He didn't think it was real acting, but he did it. So I think when I look back at my history, my home is definitely theater. And yet they didn't want me to go into theater. They thought it was too hard a life. So what? I chose dance. And I think that my home is theater and my tools are dance. That's how I get at everything that I've made. I started with Ernestine Stodell at age 13, and it was basically because I had grown so fast that I was very weak. And the only way I could get out of doing all the sports was to take a dance class. So I took classes with her. And what I loved about Ernestine was that she always brought heart forward, that you must learn to dance through loving dance, through loving this moment. That's my memory of the classes that I took with her. And then at 14, I saw Nikolai's Imago. And my spirit just got exploded in seeing this. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, and I loved it because of that. I couldn't hold on to it in my mind, but I could feel it through my whole being. So then when I was 16, I went to New York to study with him. And it was supposed to be a year out before going back to college, but it turned into the rest of my life. What are the threads that come from the Nikolai tradition into my own work? I think there were several incredible gifts, and one was about a relationship to space and developing your sensibility and sensitivity to space in a very refined way. I often will hear dancers talk about space, but I realize that Nick's definition and his demand that you would work with interior space or space right at the edge of the body or in the peripheral space right around the body, or the volumetric space, or the space moving out beyond, or the trajectory inwards. It was such a deep performance gift that he gave us to train that way. And I think that that's one of the threads that comes in. And I actually can see this in the Heisenberg principle piece, that it's the relationship of the space between the object, the balloon, and the person. And how do they energetically reach through that space? That's one huge gift from the Nikolai tradition. A second one has to do with presence. And I think that in the training that we were given through the Nikolai tradition was one in which it was demanded that you were present in every moment, and that you had intentionality, that you were clear about what it was you were shaping. You knew it verbally even, as well as intuitively, that everything was focused in the statement you wanted to make. Not just do this step, follow me, imitate me, do that. But here's the concept, and how do you work from your interior knowledge, your sentience, to create that statement, and then move it out into space. So it was something that really had this current of start on the inside, move outwards, and stay utterly present. I toured with the Nikolai Company. He was going into that huge crescendo of worldwide touring, and it was quite extraordinary. We danced for the Shah of Iran, the BBC, a month at Sadler's Wells, Théâtre de la Ville. It was an incredible experience, life-changing. But by the end of that time, I was thinking, this is really hard. It was 4 months, 15 countries, 1 day off. And I thought there's got to be another way of being. And, you know, when you're 22, you take these wild chances. And I decided I'd go out to California. And my partner had moved there, and I moved there kind of kicking and screaming, thinking I'm going to the wilderness. I'm leaving New York, where I grew up. But I went out to California and stumbled around, for sure, for a while, trying to figure out, how do I live who I am when I don't have all the support that I have been used to, of a daily class, of peers, of the experience of living in New York daily. I feel like I struggled a lot, but I began to realize right away that I was prolific in making work. And after a while I realized it's very hard to keep organization of company together if you don't have it called a company and you rehearse for a solid period of time. So I think I backed into every major decision in my life. I didn't intend to have a company. I intuited that having a company meant you were going to do more administration than art. So I didn't want a company, but I backed into it because it was really the most efficient way for me to develop work. Then I toured, and it grew and developed, and I feel very lucky that I was able to take my own company on State Department tours of Europe, and Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and Japan, Hong Kong. I mean, I feel like so much was given to me, and somehow in this tiny little place of California, my work spread out. I think it's because I got used to saying yes to everything. And, you know, now at this age I go, oh, I have no security, but I said no, I never said no. I said yes to everything, and I have had many adventures in life. But it took me into these various ways where I saw it, perhaps to try to get at the idea of wonderment, which I think was always driving me, and probably why Nikolai meant something to me. How do you bring forward to people a sense of the wonder of this world, the miracle that we're alive? I mean, I get so caught up in, I'm late, or, you know, whatever the things are, I have to do this, and yet if I can step back and feel the wonder of being on this planet, that's, I think, what has driven my art making. And it comes about in two different ways, in very introspective, quiet ways, contemplative ways, really, which has to have a larger questioning than just the glory of physicality. It has a way to try to hold people in a question, which I'm quite interested in how to do that. So I think that there's the look at the mystery, which brings the introspective, quiet pieces. And then I think there's the celebration aspect of the joyfulness that, hey, we are on the planet, let's make something of this. And that part has gotten me into a lot of adventures where I started working with Bobby McFerrin early on, and I've had many adventures with him, directing opera around the world, MTV, videos, his stuff on Arsenio Hall and Today's Show. I mean, kind of crazy things, but all related to the improvisational skills that I learned with Nick. And I think also that sense of wonder was what made me say yes to the circus. I had done a version of the Nutcracker in 1982 that Dance Magazine said was the first alternative. But to do it, I couldn't remember the storyline. And yet the Tchaikovsky music tells you every beat that's in there. And I didn't want to go back and see it. I wanted to make up my own story and find my way in. But listening to that music, I thought, oh, I have to make circus in here. I didn't know anything about circus, but probably the security of working with Nick and my own kind of unbounded imagination brought me into making circus, even when I didn't know what I was doing. And that then led to a woman who ran the Pickle Family Circus starting to watch my work. And one day she came up to me and said, oh, I'm looking for a new artistic director. And my husband said, I know a great one. And we all went, you do? Who? And John said, Tandy. And we laughed, thought it was a great joke. And then the next day she called me up and she said, you know what? That was brilliant. How about it? So that was another thing I backed into being in the circus. And I looked at their books and I knew they were going under. But so I thought, can I say yes to this job to direct a circus show and figure it's 6 months of my life and I'll probably not be paid because I could read their books by now in my learning about administration. And so I said yes. And what stunned me was that then I've made tons of circus, full-length circuses, at least 10 full-length circuses. I stayed on as their artistic director for 10 years. And then I went to Japan and directed the Moscow Circus and was able to bring in American dancers, because I'm always trying to get dance into circus, and I brought in all my designers to Japan and worked with the Russians. Amazing experience. So that's all, just that these kind of experiences take me way beyond the highway of dance. That it's the dance tool that has brought me and enabled me to be able to work in these different forms. But it's some other kind of imagination that's kept me in it. Or doing all the characters for Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. I love doing that because, I think early on I was criticized because I had a sense of humor. Now I think it's okay in the dance world to have humor. But in the early 70s, you weren't considered a serious artist if you could make people laugh. The older I get, the more I realize that's serious art. If you can make people laugh, the older you get, the more you need the laughter. I found it really interesting in my life to be able to go down the two paths, one where it is celebratory, and that is the path where you're going to open up the largest audience and bring people into art. And I think that's a mission for me, is to not stay with an audience that is already well known to dance, that they're the aficionados who show up to every concert. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for being peers with them. But I do want my work to speak to a large audience. I feel very blessed that in this life I connected in with somebody who has not only been a life partner, but also a work partner. There was a moment where we were going to blow apart, and we looked at each other and we can't, because our work is so connected. We met on a blind date. This is my partner, John Scoville, who's a composer, a wonderful composer, has worked with dancers through the years. John did Nikolai's last score, Aurora, for him, did some for Murray Lewis, for Laura Dean, for Doug Nielsen, quite a lot of people he's worked with. But I've been the lucky one and has had him in-house composer. But John's work, his eye is as refined as his ear. So he's able to really find the way that music can support what he sees. And choreographers don't really have to talk a lot to him because he gets it right away. He's seen enough. He's very sensitive to the visual dynamics of something, and that sometimes it's important to counterpoint or be with. He's wonderful with that. We've also had a relationship in which I will have choreographed to a piece of music of his, and on the day of the show, he'll switch it. And, you know, at first I'm aghast, want to tear my hair out, and yet he's usually right. He's really got sensitivity about how music locates what the visual is. And that's, I always feel that he locates my work. I'm thrilled to have these beautiful dancers doing Heisenberg's principle here with you. It's been a delight to have this experience of seeing how different psyches work with the material. You know, when I come in with a work that isn't challenging a dancer physically, I'm always a bit nervous that they will feel that this is beneath them, that they have been practicing fouettes or whatever it is. And wait, well, where's my solo moment? Where do I get to jump around? And so I realized that this piece is about practicing tenderness. And for them, the relationship is with this large object that's magical, just slightly magical. You can't quite get a hold on it. And watching these two beautiful dancers find their own psyche's relationship to the project, done very differently, and yet both very tenderly in their own personality, has been wonderful. Heisenberg's principle, for me, is one of these pieces. It's about celebration or wonder. It's a way to bring the audience in to sensing the magic that life holds for us if we just slow down and look at it. You know, there's a little coup de théâtre that's in there at the moment that the balloon is let go. It's out of gravity. It's a kind of fairy tale without a story. It's asking us to experience ourselves anew in this world. I mean, this is a lot of philosophy for a very simple, charming event. But I think it's important that we, as adults, experience ourselves in that glistening place that we usually say is out of childhood, but I think that's just because it's not tarnished. It's not childish to have a sense of wonder. It's really our gift, is to experience that wonder.
Working with Tandy was a unique experience that was really refreshing, I think. She brought immediately to the studio an energy of lightness and spoke a lot about the tenderness of the piece itself, and I felt like she brought that in the way that she interacted with us as well, that she was very tender with us, and so sincerely excited about the process and about sharing the piece.
And like, because when she met us right away, she said, I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was like she liked our energy when we walked into the room. And it made me feel like right away, she kind of like what Brenna said, she created an environment. As soon as we walked in the room, and we felt that giving, kind of caring, she had almost an ethereal way about her to me that made it even more magical, you know, working with her.
This working environment was different in its level of intimacy. It felt also very collaborative, that she was excited to hear about or to see what came out of us in the process, and that it wasn't as much about staging the work exactly as it had been before, but really about what will it be this time.
For me, in the environment that she kind of created, was how I felt like I couldn't do anything wrong. I could do something better, you know what I mean? But I couldn't do anything wrong. Like, if I remember one instance when, because I'm very balletic in my walking, and she said she wanted it to be pedestrian, but she still wanted it to be as a dancer, kind of. So we had to mix these two things, but not look balletic, and be able to walk across the floor, almost floating across the floor, but still make it look pedestrian. And that was that was one of the interesting things for me, when she was creating, like Brenna said, creating it on us anew. When she would do the piece, it made me want to do it more, because just watching her walk around that room with that balloon in this like partnership or fellowship, for a better word, with this balloon, just, I almost got teary-eyed sometimes, because it was just, it was this inanimate object, but it was very emotional, a very emotional connection between us and the balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about moments of being able to watch her dance it as well.
Right.
That, yeah, it was so captivating. And that, just the energy that she had in interacting in a normal situation was ethereal.
Right.
And then it was tenfold when she kind of inhabited the space of the piece also. I think for me, in noticing the differences between the two of us, it was such a joy to see the evolution of General's performance of it, and to be in the studio and watch that discovery kind of happen, and to feel like, wow, I've never experienced that part that way, or I wish I could do that part that way, or to kind of see the joy of the process evolving on another person was really exciting. And then that went away actually when we got into the theater, because I didn't get to watch him. I mean, I saw you, when was it? In our tech rehearsal maybe? And that was the one time that I saw it from the audience. Mm-hmm. And that was so tremendous, that experience of seeing it on stage finally, seeing how vast the stage space was, and how the proportions of you as the dancer and the balloon kind of shifted as it moved through the air, and there was something just magical again about seeing it. So I really appreciated having another person that I could see what it was kind of like, and also appreciate the differences that were there between the two of us.
Yeah, and even the difference in the studio, because Brenna would do things sometimes that she might have liked, you know, and when it would come to me and I would try to do it like Brenna, it didn't always work. So she even though it was the same piece, she still let us keep that individuality, and what worked great for me did not necessarily work great for Brenna. And I want to talk about once we got into the theater, because in this rehearsal studio, for some reason, you don't see the size difference in the balloon and the person. But on that big stage in Meany, Brenna almost looked tiny in relationship to the balloon. So it brought yet another facet to the whole thing.
And to
really
make
great.
you look tiny
I know.
is impressive, because
I know.
you're a tall man.
I know, but you didn't think of that kind of thing in the studio at all.
Yeah. I was just remembering our trials backstage or in the studio. Also, learning to blow up the balloon was as much a process as learning to deal with it once it was blown up.
Yeah. And that was even a discovery on her part too, because she really couldn't remember how they did it, because we watched a video of one guy doing it. I don't remember his name, but you couldn't see the nipple of the balloon. But when we did it, she couldn't figure out how did we do that. So we were experimenting the whole time how to make the balloon drop at the right speed or float at the right speed and hang time in the air. You know, it was very Heisenberg.
Yeah.
Because you never knew how to do it the same each time.
Yeah, it never was
Yeah.
the same. And we had, I think, a time or two when it was just like the perfect weight. I wish that we could have just taken that balloon and used it the whole time, but it was creating this new dance partner for yourself every single time, and knowing that it was going to be a little bit different every single time.
And that's exactly what it was a partner. It was a dance partner, the balloon. That's why it had a bow at the end. Even though the choreography was set, it was definitely going to be different every night because of the weight of the balloon. So in turn, we would add a dime or some kind of coin to weight it. So it would drop a little faster if we happened to put too much helium in, or sometimes it would go in the other direction and we would put not enough helium and it would drop too fast, which changed some of the choreography, because we had the objective of doing the same choreography, but at the same time trying to work with the balloon, which was not always the same.
Both the studio and the theater presented their own challenges in terms of air currents and just the space that the balloon had to move in. That in the studio we had, if the door was open, that created a problem. If the door was closed, it was different. It would get caught in these sort of
backdrafts.
Right. And we'd have to throw things at it to get it to fall back down. And then we had, I think, the first time that we tried it on stage, a fairly successful go of it. But there was still this big unknown of what's going to happen once we get a whole audience, a whole group of bodies in the space. How is that going to change the way the balloon behaves? And I think it did change it some. And the drift, the upstage and downstage drift, seemed to be different all the different times that we did it. I had, I think, a night where it kept going upstage. I was so worried it was going to hit the scrim, and then nights when I was like, oh no, it's going to drift away into the audience, and then it's just going to become a game out there or something, off into the wing. I think there was one night that it went into the wing, and I wasn't even aware that it had gone into the wing. I thought it was right at the edge of the wing, and I was going to go catch it just in time. Little did I know from the audience's perspective that it had drifted all the way off. And I think there was an interesting challenge in trying to, the piece has such a, again, we keep using this word magical, but this magical calm about it. and still having to maintain a real attentiveness or an attenuation about where is the balloon going. So there's the calm that you want to maintain, but also this, I need to be absolutely on top of things, or it's going to drift off into the wing and the audience is going to see it disappear, or whatever happens. So that was challenging to kind of balance those two energies of calm and attention.
I guess one of the major things I took from this experience working with the balloon and working with Tandy was, as it is in Heisenberg, as it is in the Heisenberg principle, the uncertainty, because I come from a background of more, I guess I would say, even the ballet part of my career and the musical theater part of my career, everything had to be just so, or you would get hit by a set, or you would, or you would run into somebody who had the same, who was coming on stage at the same time or something like that. But here I was on stage alone with this inanimate object, and the relationship between the two, although uncertain on certain nights, we still had this, this might sound weird, but I felt like we had this camaraderie. And some nights I would actually forget that there was an audience out there until, I would hear a laughter, or I would hear a sigh or something. And it was just that relationship with the balloon that was so special, and that Tandy made it so special, because you could tell she really believed in this piece and really believed in making this relationship real between me and the balloon.
Yeah, that camaraderie was amazing, that you did sort of develop it, and it, I mean, just like any sort of friendship, it had these sort of trials to it, and also these really close and intimate moments. And I think for me, the other thing that was significant about doing a piece that did have so much uncertainty in it, that it was really this absolute manifestation of something that we're striving for all the time in dance, which is making the performance fresh every time and finding new things within it every time. And you had no choice but to do that here. It was really to be fully in it and experiencing it in each and every moment. And so I hope that, I can remember that and kind of return to some of that feeling in future performances of other works, that it does have this, you're there and you're doing it, and then you let it go and it passes, and then something new comes and you do that and it passes, and it's essentially the same work, but something very, very different, a very different and new experience each time.